Hello and welcome to the flight test debrief. I wanted to film this episode because I think foreign conversions are different than straight flight tests. So in Canada, you can obtain your private pilot license pretty much for free because most of foreign ICAO countries license would allow you to convert into Canadian private pilot license. For details, you can always contact Transport Canada for details. For commercial license, unless you have an FAA license, which is a simple written exam conversion at this time, rules change all the time. For most of other countries, you need to do a written exam and a flight test. And I think what I have observed that foreign commercial license conversions are not as necessarily the easy flight test. To the contrary, it seems that the candidates tend to struggle for a few reasons. So when we as instructors meet a candidate, they already have commercial license. They potentially even have quite a bit of flight time, anywhere from a few hundred to maybe a couple thousand hours or more. And now they need to do a flight test. Well, Canadian pilots who just started their flight training, they do the flight test at around 150 hours. How can it possibly be difficult for somebody who already has 2,000 hours? And I think that this is often exactly this thinking, this approach that gets the instructor and the candidate into trouble. Yes, this candidate, this pilot, would probably have operated an aircraft for an extended period of time. There are, however, a number of things that are very Canadian specific, and we should never assume that the student does know that they can handle it. Even if they were working as a commercial pilot for many years, they still need to be trained, explained, and going over all the details the same way, exactly the same way as you would be training a candidate from Canada. In fact, I think commercial conversions are harder because than a commercial flight test from scratch, because a commercial candidate who trained in Canada from the very beginning, they would have already seen a PPL flight test in Canada, and commercial flight test is very similar to private flight test. So it's not even their first time seeing the procedure. There are a couple of differences, but really not a big one. For foreign candidates, that would be their first exposure to Canadian flight test. Language can often be a problem as well. Somebody who has flown in Canada, communicated in English, knows the phraseology, accent, the speed of speech on the radio in Canada will be more familiar with the radio work than somebody who just arrived to Canada, and even though they might have passed the ICAO language exam required, they will not necessarily be as comfortable. And one thing is to speak English, the other one is to know the specific phraseology. Which brings me also to the airspace, which is very different, not just foreign. A pilot coming from Toronto to do a flight test in Vancouver would probably need additional training before they can be successful on their flight test in a different region. Somebody coming from a different country where the airspace might be different, different procedures, different communication, different rules and restrictions, may find it even more challenging. So even for a very experienced pilot flying into a busy airport in Brazil or in Europe, flying in a small busy airport in Vancouver area can be a totally different challenge. So train foreign pilots on procedures and the airspace like you would be training somebody from the very beginning. The paperwork is also different, and not just the paperwork but the regulations as well. Currency requirements. Commercial pilots need to know what they need for recency, currency, maintenance procedure, technical release, and it can vary from country to country. So do not assume if they worked before as a commercial pilot, they know the Canadian way of doing things. The last point I would like to talk about are the procedures and the exercises themselves. For example, doing a steep turn on the flight test, Canadian way is expected to do at 45 degrees. And if the student, for example, did the flight test in his home or her home country doing a steep turn at 60 degrees, for example, they still need to be explained how to do what needs to be done Canadian way. It's not just knowing the angle of bank, but how the plane feels in that configuration. Procedures like the forced approach, diversion, how to do a precaution, simulated precautionary landing, is something that can be applied anywhere in the world, but Canadian Flight Test Guide instructs you to do it certain ways. And experienced student or not, they need to know how to do it and what is expected of them on the Canadian commercial pilot flight test. So go over all the exercises and don't fall from the instructor perspective or the student perspective into the illusion that knowing something in general would be make it easy to just assume something in a different country. Having general flight experience is amazing, but knowing what exactly is expected from the flight test on a specific flight test is something that is both instructors and students' job to prepare thoroughly. If you have any more questions, please comment down below. I will try to answer them as much as I can. And until then, good luck on your flight test. Subscribe to the channel to receive the updates. Thank you very much for watching.